tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries.
What's up, people? We here.
Inflation like very few people have ever seen before. Probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute.
You are not a president.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. What are you talking about? I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China, what he ended up doing is under Donald Trump selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it.
That fake laugh
again. It will be the end of our country.
Laugh.
She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
These is all talking
She didn't want
points.
that.
These
Her
are
husband
all
didn't
talking
want that.
points.
A 12
Her
or
husband didn't want
13-year-old
that.
survivor
More than
of
likely, she ain't
incest
married. This is
being
America.
forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, When Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were
She
to
can't
be
do nothing
reelected,
about
he
that.
will sign a national abortion
she
ban.
could not do-
Understand, in
and
his
she- and
Project
he won't-
2025, there would be a
and
national
he can't sign
abortion
a national
monitor
abortion
that would be
ban.
monitoring
And
your
she cannot do
pregnancies,
that.
your
A
miscarriages.
president cannot
I think
do that.
the American people
Only
believe
Supreme Court,
that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about
Supreme
one's
Court
own
people
body,
can do that. She
should
cannot
not be
do-
made by the government.
that. Judges
Thank
can do
you,
that.
Vice President Harris.
Well, there she
Only
goes
judges
again.
can do
It's
that.
a lie. I'm not signing a ban,
Yeah,
and there's no
this
reason
all-
to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody
he been
wanted.
consistent on
Democrats,
that.
Republicans, and
He's not
everybody
a far
else,
left, a
and
far
every
right,
legal
Republican
scholar
at
wanted
all.
it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
A 3 or
And it
4
may
in
take a
America
little
can
time,
be a 3
but
or
for
4 in America.
52 years, this issue
What are you
has
talking about?
torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this
It's a
issue
state
has now
issue.
been taken over by the states.
It's a
Would you
state
veto
issue.
a national abortion ban if it came
Well, I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one,
Why-
she said
why
she'll
are
go back
these
to Congress. She'll
liberal,
never get the vote.
progressive
It's
women
impossible
care
for her
about
to get the
killing
vote,
babies?
especially now with the 50-50,
Why are they so
essentially
care about-
50-50 in
Guess what?
both
Most of these women
Senate
gonna
and the
vote
House.
for it.
She's not going to
Care
get the
about
vote.
killing
She can't get the
babies.
vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me
Demonic.
of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free.
Yeah.
But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans.
She will
They
not-
taunted
they can't do nothing
young
about it.
people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never
If they
get
could
this
do something about
approved.
it, it would have
So it
been
doesn't
done
matter what she
something
says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact
see,
is
they
that for
trying to
years, they
exclude,
wanted to get
the
it out of
Supreme Court
Congress
up.
and out of the federal
And
government.
that-
And we did
that's gonna take
something that
more
everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely
That's
support
all they
reinstating the
care
protections
about.
of Roe v. Wade.
That-
And as you rightly
Roe v.
mentioned,
Wade is
nowhere in
actual-
America
a whole
is
lie
a
anyway.
woman carrying a pregnancy to term and
This all-
asking for
this is
an
crazy
abortion.
about
That is not
abortion,
happening. It's
abortion,
insulting
abortion.
to the women
Like,
of
these
America.
people
And
crazy.
understand what has been happening
Yeah,
under
a lot of
Donald
these
Trump's
women vote.
abortion bans.
That's all they
Couples
vote on. They vote
who
on
pray
bullshit.
and,
They don't vote on
and
economy. They
dream
don't
of
vote on
having a
crime and none of
family
that. All
are being
these
denied IVF
progressive
treatments.
women vote on
What is
abortion.
happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely
Please.
afford childcare as it is, have to travel
And
to
you
another
guys don't give a
state
shit about that.
to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting
So
her
many
through
talking points behind her
is
head.
unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond.
Freedom.
Another lie. It's another lie. I
Yeah,
have been
let
a
her
leader
respond.
on IVF, which is fertilization.
acting
The
ass
IVF,
faces.
I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on
The
IVF
woman
from the
got more
Alabama
freedom
courts,
than the man,
I saw the people of
100%.
Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
Answer.
Why don't you ask her
Why,
that
why
question?
don't you
Why
answer the
can't-
question?
why can't they
Because
answer
under
that?
Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question
you
with
could,
your
you could
ABC,
do
NBC.
abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration
Yeah,
and border
President
security.
Trump,
We
thank
know it's
you.
an issue that's important
Yo,
to Republicans,
these some
Democrats,
biased
voters
ass
across the
fake
board in
journalists,
this country.
especially the
Vice
woman.
President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of
Money.
migration from Central America. We know that
This is
illegal
why we
border
in the
crossings
situation
reached a
we've been
record
in.
high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know
Good
the
job,
numbers
Trump.
since then have
Trump with
dropped
the abortion
significantly. But my
These
question to you
304s wanna
tonight
have
is,
abortion
why
so
did the
much they
administration
can.
wait until 6 months
They got the
before the
freedom to do
election
it.
to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say
And you
that
did a
United
wonderful
States
job.
Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes
He's such a
at a
liar.
time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions,
Hey, what are
who
you, a
actually
leader?
addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something
Why
really
is that
unusual.
not a
And I'm gonna
subject being
invite you
raised?
to attend one
Are
of
you
Donald Trump's
kidding?
rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he
This
talks
lady-
about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear
Really?
him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires.
And what
And
you
I'll tell
doing?
you, I believe you
You in
deserve
office now.
a president who actually puts you
You're
first. And
destroying
I
our
pledge to you
country.
that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
You
President
ran
Trump, on that
recipes
point, I want to get your
progressive.
response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people started leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And then
Absolutely.
showing them
Look
in
at
a
her
different
face.
light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened
Absolutely.
3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject.
Look how
What
fake
they have
look.
done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that
Look how
live
fake laughing.
there. And this is what's happening in our
Such an
country.
elitist.
And it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've seen
this,
people on television.
let me just say here, this is
The people on
Yeah,
television
they
say
don't
my
care about
dog
the
was
people.
taken and
They don't-
used for food. So
The Democrat
maybe he said that,
elitists
and maybe
do not
that's a
care
good
about
thing
the
to
people.
say for a city
This is
manager.
not
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the
said
city
their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
Yep, they will
You talk
find out.
about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney,
She had
and
the
John
endorsement of 200
McCain,
neocons.
including the endorsement of
All
former Vice
neocons.
President Dick Cheney and Congress member
A
Liz
super
Cheney.
neocon, a
And
pillar.
if you want to
Yep.
really know
All
the
warmongers.
inside track on who
All
the former president is,
warmongers.
if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national
you
security
guys got
advisor has
contempt
said he
for
is
the
dangerous
Constitution of
and
the United States.
unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen
we
to
barely
this kind of
surviving now?
rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations
actually fired
anybody
a lot
has
of
ever
people.
seen. So
As the vice
when somebody does a
president,
bad
everybody that
job,
votes under her, she
I
fired a whole
fire
lot
him.
of people.
And you take a guy like Esper, he
fired
was
a
no
whole
good.
lot of
I
people.
fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a
She's
book,
the agent
because
of
with me,
Cam.
they
Look
can
at
write
her.
books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not
Yep.
to have books written about you.
And they should have
But
been
just to
fired them
finish, I
damn
got more
economists.
votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take
Yeah,
us through this. What does this
I
look like?
believe
Will
it
authorities
is
be going
too.
door to door in this country?
as any American.
It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know the crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes. But it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric
That's the
of our
main
country by what
point why they did all this. So they could
There's
get
never been
votes.
anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the
That's
fabric
the
of our
main
country.
point.
Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here
Yep.
is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent
Absolutely. It's a
statements that they
freaking
made.
fact.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump As you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime.
Yeah, this is what they
It was
do.
a fraud, just like they are
Yo, all these people are
818,000
freaking nuts.
jobs that
They're
they said
trying
they
to
created
tell
turned out to be a
people-
fraud.
President Trump, thank you.
Yeah.
Respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security
Yeah, because of you
economic
demons.
crimes, election
Because of you
interference,
demons.
has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big
Oh, wow.
court appearance
Wow.
is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is
What
it's
is she
important that
talking
we
about?
move forward, that we turn the page on this same
Come on,
old
Bob.
tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for,
These women
address
can't
what we must do to support our small
reflect
businesses,
like no
address
other.
bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly,
You
the
can do
American people are
it now.
exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
No, your playbook,
Excuse me. Every one
deflecting
of those
playbook
cases
of lies.
was started by them against their political opponent, and I'm winning most of them,
Absolutely.
and I will win the rest of the appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them, but those are cases. It's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases, and then they say, "Oh, he's a criminal." They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, "Oh, that's the toughest of them all." A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this
Extreme.
election in
No, it's not
2024 takes
extreme, baby. Y'all did.
place.
It was
The United States Supreme Court
weaponization of the
recently
Democratic
ruled that
Party.
the former
That's what
president
you
would
guys
essentially
did.
be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand that this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department
You are. This woman is
of
such
Justice
a
against his
liar.
political
But
enemies.
That's what these progressives.
Someone who has
liberals do.
openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald
Members
Trump were
of-
back in the
Really?
White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We
Like
know
you
DA
guys are doing.
Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to stop
President Harris,
him.
thank you. Let's
Vice President Harris, in your
More fake
Last one for
fear
President.
mongering by the
This is
ones
the one-
that's actually doing all the
They
fear.
weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy.
No,
I'm a
it's
threat
not
to
a probably. You did.
democracy. They're the
They
threat to
are
democracy.
the threat of democracy.
Russia investigation.
They are the
we have a
threat
lot
to
to- we have a lot
democracy.
to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking.
This lady's a freaking genius.
Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed. And I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania.
Just hurry up, Frank.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States.
That's
And
a
in fact,
lie. You did not make that clear.
I was the tie-breaking
This
vote
lady's
on the
a
Inflation
fraud. She's nothing but an empty
Reduction
suit.
Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say
we have thousands
going to
of
work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on longstanding work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed.
Seniors are getting scammed.
And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
Delusional people.
And name calling. The true measure of the
You've been name calling all night.
The leader who actually understands that strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump,
Well, first of all, I wasn't given
most progressives.
$400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him, but I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and it built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
Freaking hating.
Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up.
Yes, you
very
are.
wrongly, very horribly.
You wanted to defund,
and everybody's laughing at it. Okay, they're all laughing.
You said it several times.
She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like she was big on defund the police in Minnesota. She went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Yeah, be quiet.
Please. Does that sound familiar? She went out. She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would
radical left.
She wants to confiscate your guns, and
she's a radical left.
Never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election,
not a liberal, progressive.
Fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody's ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will
absolutely like they
be
doing
dead.
right now.
Solar.
Right now.
But they need a whole desert to
You're
get some
doing
energy
it
to come
now,
out.
demon.
You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar. But they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil. These are not good things for the environment.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis.
Like
Democrats. On
Democrats.
January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out of the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters.
Why is this?
Is there anything
why are these
you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said
propagandists, NBC,
a thing that isn't governed
why?
Peacefully and patriotically. I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was
ABC,
killed.
NBC,
Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated
Look
so
how it
badly.
looks.
I ask,
Like,
what
these people,
about all the people that are pouring into our
money.
country, killing people, that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning,
You are.
well, I'm surprised you're not talking
You
about the border.
are.
That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What are they going to be
You
prosecuted?
did a horrible job.
One of these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me
one of those, David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted.
Yes.
Or in
Yes!
Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. One of those people
All of
is going to be
spring
prosecuted.
and
Let
summer
me
of
just ask you,
2020. These
As you were the
ruined the
president, you were
country.
watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes,
I
sir.
had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in
what
writing,
is
as you know.
wrong with these?
I said, you know, this is going to be a very,
This is why
very
these
big
people
rally
so
or whatever you want to call it.
brainwashed
And again,
because they
it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said,
Democratic
I'd like
operatives like NBC,
to give you 10,000 National Guard corps soldiers.
CNN.
They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. I want to get rid of that tape.
A couple months ago.
It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy
They don't
Pelosi
never
was
talk
responsible.
about
She didn't
the
do her job.
riots of
Question was about you as president, not about
2020.
former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
you people
I was at the
are
Capitol on
sick.
January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States
On
incited a
that
violent mob
day, excited
attack
of a
our
violent
nation's
mob.
capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches,
She about to
spewing
do some propaganda shit.
anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember
That's a lie.
that when it
It's
came
a
to the
fact. That's a
Proud Boys,
lie.
a militia,
These people are demonic.
the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's
Get a Trump.
not
Get
go
a-
back. We're not going back. It's time to turn
Back to what? You want us
the
to
page.
stay into,
And if that was a bridge too far
stay into
for you, well, there is a place
depression?
in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand
Us
for our
looking at
democracy,
it,
to stand
You look weird.
for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is
Her over
about
there
attacking
writing notes the whole time.
the foundations of our democracy because you
Yes,
don't
you
like
know
the
she fake as all hell.
outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome
Are you
of this
kidding
election is not
me?
to his liking.
Oh my God!
Let's
these
turn the page on this.
people.
Let's not go back.
This is why
Let's
most of the
chart a
country
course
is, a lot
for
of
the
this
future.
country is brainwashed.
And not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they've destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they
It's
bring
crazy.
2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about
2025.
the Capitol.
These people
Why
are
are we
a bunch of
allowing
fucking
these
liars.
millions
This is why
of people to
You
come through on the
clowns
southern border? How come she's not
that
doing
vote
it? And I'll tell
for
you what I would
this
do. And I would be
woman
very proud to do it. I would
have
say
a
we would both
problem
lead
with truth.
this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is
That's
say
all
to the
she got to
Border
do.
Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people
Absolutely.
are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue of abortion because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in?
No, I don't acknowledge it at all. I said that sarcastically. You know that. And we said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval.
These Democrats, boy.
Almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election,
They don't want to look.
people should never be thinking about an election as we need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in.
That's a fact.
And these people are
all
trying
you
to get them to
people
vote.
that's watching this,
And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch
Which I don't
all
care.
of these
I
pieces
care
of video.
about killing
I
babies.
didn't detect this sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, you know this, you and your allies.
Because you're a Democratic
In front of many
operative.
judges, many of
It's
them
like
actually
most fake
So they said we didn't have
journalists
standing.
in the mainstream media.
Other thing, they said we didn't have standing. A technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love that you do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into
And that's a
decline.
fact.
We have a nation
That's a fact.
that is dying, David.
That's a fact.
Thank you.
Stop worrying about somebody being
here tonight.
racist and all this
So he
bull
still
crap.
believes
This is
he did
for
not
our
lose the election
children.
that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something
Grown men worry about
that's
somebody being
up in the last couple of days. This was a post from
want to be
President Trump
grown
about this
women.
upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he said, this will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was-
No, that's what you got.
Fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election.
Y'all know it's
I'm gonna
three
tell you
versus
that
one
I have
here.
traveled
Y'all know it's
the world
three
as vice
versus
president of the
one,
United
and
States.
he's kicking all three
And-
of their asses.
World leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked
Are
with
you
military
kidding?
leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a
This woman
disgrace.
is deranged.
And when you then
No,
talk
no.
in this
Like most liberal
way in a presidential
Progressive
debate
women.
and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact.
No, baby,
That's deeply troubling, and the
absolutely
American
confused
people
about
just-
facts.
Deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr.
It's
President.
only delusional people
Just
actually.
about world leaders. Victor
In
Orban,
my
one of the most
opinion, in my opinion.
respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid. And
Yes, demonic
he's not afraid. I'm
person.
just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's
A little fake.
going on with North Korea, by the way.
facial
He said
expression.
Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build the pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running on Senate first. He got no
I
votes.
can't stand her faces.
He got
And
14
a lot
million
of
votes.
these
What you did, you talk about a
neoliberal women think that's
democracy.
cool, and
He
these
got 14 million
beta
votes and
boy
they
boys think that's
throw
cool
him out of
to make
office.
faces
And you know
like
what? I'll
a
give you a little
4-year-old.
secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
Your time
I
is
think
up.
we're
That's
going to
what they do. They love democracy
Turning out
in
to
the
be
Democratic Party.
Bill Hamas
They
war and
love
hostages are still
democracy.
being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, children and mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately. And the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and an equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority
It's
party.
a fact.
She hates
You were,
Israel.
lady.
If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are fears of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very, very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around.
Because Democrats
Look at what's
are the
happening with the
new old
Houthis and Yemen.
Republicans
Look at what's going on
and
in
warmongers for
the
the
Middle East.
last 10
This would have never
years.
happened. I will
Since
get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war
Obama.
with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done
He started.
before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide
Nobody don't know nothing about you,
and
lady.
distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy.
Are
It
you
is well
kidding?
known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is
There's another lie.
well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he
No wars
exchanged
under Donald Trump.
love
What is
letters
she
with
talking
Kim
about?
Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be
you
president
Democrat, you progressive
again because they're
Democrats
so
are
clear.
real
They can
dictators. You
manipulate you
warmongering
with flattery
Democrats and
and
Republicans
favors.
are the
And that is why
real dictators
so many
of
military
this world.
leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we
Call her names
have to have a
again.
president who is not consistently
Call her names again.
weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant
That's another fact.
because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're
Whoever voted for this woman,
ineffective. And
they just
Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot
and they got
of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
derangement issues. And they got
much more of this historic
derangement
ABC News
issues.
presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News
Hold on a
presidential
second. Hold on a second.
debate will continue after this.
Let me this is crazy right here. Hold on a second. So, yo, it's so much stuff that we can recap. We could do what's going on, but I'm just gonna tell you, man. Trump is housing these people. And Kamala Harris, she's laying an egg to me. Obviously, her facial expression is like a 4-year-old girl, and you know what I'm saying. And she everything she's talking about is rhetoric. There's no facts to it. It's a lot of stuff that I hear from the everyday people that listen to the mainstream media so much and don't listen to nothing else. Trump derangement, mainstream media. She sounds like a uneducated voter, like a lot of people I listen to on a daily basis. Uneducated voter. It's scary, but in my opinion, I believe that it's going to only people that's going to vote for her are either Trump deranged or just don't like this country. And it's going to be many people like that. So Trump, in my opinion, again, is winning this by a far, far expand, in my opinion. Trump is doing it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And it's situations that this woman was talking about again. It sounds like the same rhetoric I get from people that I believe are very uneducated when it comes to voting, or they just Trump the range, and that's most of them. So, I just again, this country is like they more Trump the range than protecting our future as Americans, and that's a damn shame. But that's what a lot of these people are. That's what a whole lot of these people are. They Trump the range. I see it all the time. He like and another thing I see her attacking him more with her lies, and I also excuse me, Trump on the abortion situation, Trump killed it. And I hate even talking about this because I don't know, in my opinion, my little small world, I don't know any woman that got a trouble of having abortions. I know people from at least 20 states, and then the way he broke it down was like superb to me. You know what I'm saying? This is all my opinions. It had nothing to do with nothing else. It's just my opinions. And if she says something that I like, I am kind of biased because I know I did a lot of research on a lot of these Democrats in the last 10 to 15 years. But Kamala, I really don't understand why Kamala is even near a presidential debate. I just don't understand it. But I kind of do because people vote on being as though nobody really didn't vote for her. This is why another thing I believe Democrats are the opposite of democracy, and that's been for the last 10 to 15 years. You know what I'm saying? Right now, I believe Kamala Harris needs some help from people. She's very scripted, extremely scripted with her facial expressions on what she say. I tell you, she sounds like a regular person listening to deranged, neoliberal, democratic, progressive media. She sounds just like both of them. But let's turn back to this. Hold on one second. She is a very fake woman.
How it could shake up the final sprint to election day. For now, though, let's go back to the debate live in Philadelphia.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Moore and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News.
And literally, I forgot to mention this. They are not fact checking this woman. They're not fact checking this woman at all. All the lies she said, they are not fact checking this woman. The Democratic Party, the Democratic plantation, the operatives of the media are really extremely biased. And it's not even funny, man. They are not fact checking this woman at all. And she said so many lies. It's crazy. Let's keep it going.
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting with your fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're in 100 to 150.
Especially around where I live.
They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. Okay, they respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin, after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead. And it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president.
Mr. President,
That's another fact.
your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get
Yes.
it done. All right, negotiate a
Yes.
deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives
Exactly.
from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President
You know,
Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support
about America.
for Ukraine in this moment, but also as commander-in-chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans.
What?
Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days
A
before
bunch of
Russia
times.
invaded, tried
Okay.
through force to change territorial boundaries, to define one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself.
Extremely
later, I went to
failed on
NATO's eastern
everything she's saying.
To Poland and Romania.
So what
And
happened? What
The work that I and
happened?
others did, we brought 50 countries together
Like
to support
how?
Ukraine in its righteous defense.
How much
And
money did
because
you give them?
of our support, because of the air
How much American money
defense,
did
the
you give them?
ammunition, the
How
artillery,
much
the
taxes did you give them?
javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an
How
independent
much
and free
American taxes did you
country.
give them?
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would
What?
mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
President Harris, thank you
Like
for both of you.
you
I'm
guys with billions
Ukraine
and
tonight.
billions of
Afghanistan came up in the
dollars
last
of
hour.
American money
I
that
wanted to
we
respond to
have.
something you said earlier, and
The fuck?
please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that the people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't have to talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war, because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden, in my opinion.
She's
I think he's the worst president in the history of our country.
Worse. I don't
She goes down as the
know
worst
how
vice
she's
president
here.
in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate as soon as they left. Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very, very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Goldberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying, one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
Look at her face.
I want to move on now to race and
She is a
politics in this
demonic
country.
demon.
Mr. President, you recently said
They-
of Vice
these
President
women are
Harris, quote,
crazy
I didn't
today,
know
like,
she was
real,
black until
yeah.
a number of years ago when she happened to turn black,
Oh,
and
here
now
we
she
go.
wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger
we go
picture
with the
question here
race
tonight.
bit.
Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I don't
asking,
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that.
Yeah, that's
And
what you
then
put out.
I read that she was black.
Her
And
facial
that's okay.
expressions,
Either one was
I'm
okay
telling you,
with
it's a
me.
lot of
That's
shit
up to
like
her.
that. I'm telling
That's
you,
up
in
to
this
her.
society,
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
and it's stupid. It's a
I think
stupid-ass
it's,
question.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Are you kidding?
You know, I do believe that the
somebody
vast
fact
majority
check
of
this
us know that
demon?
we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned land, he
Are
owned
you black?
buildings,
That's what they should have
and
asked her. Are
he
you
was
black?
investigated
They should have asked her that.
because
Are you black?
he refused to rent
All this
property
babbling, all
to black
this,
families. Let's remember, this is the
all
same
this
individual
deflection,
who
deflections.
took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling
Oh
for the
my God.
execution of 5
They're not gonna
young
fact check this.
Black and Latino boys who were innocent,
Agree-
the Central
agree
Park
against what?
5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual
Aren't you
who
the same
spread
individual that
birther
arrested
lies about the
thousands
first Black
upon
president of
thousands
the United
of Black
States.
people?
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
You are a phony and a fraud.
Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our
Who only-
country.
who
We
all
see
the
in
people
each
that voted
other
for her, in my
a friend.
opinion,
We see in each
are
other a
delusional,
neighbor.
are
We don't
voting
want a
ignorant,
leader who
ignorant.
is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I
You
meet
guys
with
are
people
doing a
all
great
the
job with
time
this.
who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the
No,
dreams of the American
No,
people?
you don't have
Knowing that
dreams of the American
regardless
people. You have the
of
dreams
people's
of
color
illegal
or the
immigrants.
language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president
You're a
who invests
Canadian.
in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. but they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And
She's a
remember
racist
this,
as well.
she is Biden.
She
She's
hates
trying to
black
get
men.
away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad,
Mr.
and she
President,
can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
But what type
One
of
who
leadership?
believes
Progressive?
in
All
what
that
is possible,
progressiveness?
one who brings a sense of optimism about
Progressive
what we
not-
can
it's-
do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue
She has a
what has been
plan
fleeting in terms
to
of the
put us
American
more
dream by
in,
offering a help with down payment of $25,000
in
down
more
payment assistance
despair.
for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation I believe, David, that
More
people
under the
really
goddamn
want tonight,
dirt.
as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling.
Higher
name
inflation. She's
calling.
trying to get it to 60%.
Let's turn the
instead of 40%.
page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on.
You've been name
President
calling
Trump,
all
Let's turn
goddamn
to
night.
policy, please.
Plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
That's
you,
what
Mr.
her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump-
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
gonna
just need to
move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today.
Absolutely.
And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns
No,
away.
you didn't make very
Tim Walz and I
clear.
are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain,
He's such a liar.
who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the
Affordable
ability
Care Act puts
of insurance
people in
companies
debt like you're trying to do more.
to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was like?
Yeah, I remember that was
Remember when an
like.
insurance company could deny
Yeah, I remember that was like. They
if
put me-
a child
they
had
put me and
asthma,
many people
if
I
someone was a
know
breast
on
cancer
debt.
survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes. And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of.
mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years, but it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We could do much better than Obamacare, much less money, but she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue
No,
that
it
we'd like
is
to get
true.
to that's important for a number
You're
of
big
Americans,
government
in
because
particular
it feeds
younger
your
voters, and
pockets.
that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean
like
water.
the rest of you
Vice
damn
President
fake
Harris,
progressives.
you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the
Stupid
former
ass
president
question.
had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers
y'all
and Sean
please fact
Fain,
check this
who
woman,
also
please?
know that part of
No,
building
y'all
a
can't,
clean
'cause y'all
energy
Democratic
economy
opposites.
includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico,
Exactly.
in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable, but we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hold on a second. Hold on. Hold on a second. So, yeah. So this is going to be the last step, the last process of the the debate. And right now, what's her name? Kamala Harris still is doing bad, in my opinion, because my problem is I see NBC, another Democratic operative propaganda station, mainstream media station that's not fact checking her. It's a shame, but this is what it's been for the last 10 plus years, and especially with Donald Trump becoming a candidate or president or what have you. It's certain things that's bothering me about this whole situation because people are delusional about what's going on with these people. Let me see. Hold on a second. Oh, and her capital gains taxes is horrible. She want to tax, and this is what guys don't understand. What about this child tax credit thing that she's talking about? She's going to uphold. All it's going to do is put many, poor working families into debt. Middle class, poor middle class families into debt. That's what it's going to do. She's big government. And the reason why she's big government is because what they've been doing for the last 3 years, that administration. You really got to be silly to believe she's going to change anything. As a matter of fact, I think she's going to make things a lot worse for the American people. It's going to be way more crime than ever. It's going to be more. It's literally going to be more people. It's literally going to be more and more illegal immigrants taking over. And it's going to be a lot of people that's not going to care about it. It's going to be people that believes, it's going to be several people that whatever she's saying tonight and everything she's saying is nothing but, like I said before, it sounds like a regular person just watching MSNBC. And then they talk about democracy. She's talking about democracy. Why is she talking about democracy? Nobody didn't vote for her. So that means the Democratic Party made sure she was elevated. They made sure she was elevated just for them to keep the money that they had, that Joe Biden already had. That's just what happened. And this is sickening. on what's going on. She flip-flopping all over the place. And again, it's going to be people that's voting for her because it's Trump deranged. It don't have nothing to do with nothing else, in my opinion. And it's actually a fact, but Trump derangement and not really caring about America. What they care about is, anything that has something to do with hurting the American people. You know what I mean? If they vote for her, that's my opinion. I talk to people every day about this whole subject, but it's about to start now. This is going to be the last segment of this. So let's see what happens. All righty.
We're back with tonight's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
And when it ends, please join us for analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break it down.
I will not be joining them.
As we enter the final sprint to Election Day, we'll go
Democratic
back to the
outrage.
debate and closing statements.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future and the other that is focused on the past and an attempt to take us backward.
Is she drunk?
But we're not going back.
Why
And I
the fuck
do
is she looking
believe that the American people know we all have
These
so
women
much
be
more in
thinking
common than what
You're not
separates us.
strong.
And
You
we
ready
can
to call the
chart
cops.
a new way forward. And a
Fraud.
vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client,
And
the people.
Every three.
And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border.
Exactly.
They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have
It's
wars
gonna
going
get
on
even
with
worse
Russia
if
and
she
Ukraine.
elected.
We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
And welcome back to NBC News coverage of the
That's
debate.
it, baby. That's it. Let me turn this
I
off.
would go
Hold
with
on a
fiery
second.
to begin, but it goes from there. Both the candidates, you could
Oh,
argue,
man, let me tell you,
executing
turn it off.
on
I'm
their
sorry,
strategy
guys.
going in for Kamala Harris. That was
Let's top it out. Oh, yeah. So you've seen it. You heard it. You know who I'm voting for because it's logical. It's literally voting for America first. You're voting for a better economy. You're voting for a better future for our community. You're not voting for a demonic, more and more demonic so-called progressive culture. Being as though they're going to make it hell for us. It's going to be new. It's going to be, and then after Trump, it's going to be more mega politicians that's going to do a very good job. This is going to be a situation where we need this, because if we don't get it, it's going to be a problem. This woman is going to make this country even worse. She's nothing but an empty suit. She's going to do everything the handlers tell her. And this is what I'm telling you. This is what is going to happen. This woman has been up and down, don't know what to do. She's a fraud. She's a phony. You saw this. You saw what's going on. You saw her facial expressions, very immature. How's she going to handle these world leaders? How? This is why I believe if you're logical, you understand. But if you're a type of person that's voting for her because of Trump derangement, or you just don't give a shit about this country, I get it. It's whatever. Just do your thing. But I'm going to be voting on policy, something that she understands, something that she don't understand. She's horrible, in my opinion. So anyway, guys, this has been great. I'm gonna start doing stuff like this more often. I missed actually a day of homework. I'm gonna have to catch up Wednesday, tomorrow, and Thursday. A little bit too tired right now because it's been almost a 2-hour live. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Take it easy and vote Trump 2024 or whoever you want to vote for. But my real fans, the people that really love me for me, vote for whoever you want to vote for. But please vote for real policies. That's not going to help just us, but the American people in our generation that's coming up. Please, because we really need this shit. And it's very important, no matter if it's local, state, or government. We need to vote and vote. All right? Again, thanks for hanging out with me for the last 2 hours, almost 2 hours. Peace.